Hi everyone, my name is Brandon Perras-Sanchez and I am a filmmaker and author and here to answer some questions for you. Well, ironically enough, that movie would be in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I was terrified of horror movies as a kid, especially Freddy Krueger. That man cost me a lot of sleep in my childhood, but I remember going over to my cousins and her and some friends were watching it. I think it was on like USA or something, and I thought I'd be the cool kid and sit there and watch it with them, knowing damn well it was going to scare the shit out of me and ruin my month, and it definitely did. I also kind of remember seeing bits and pieces of Jaws and Alien as a kid, and also being mortified. But those are kind of early memories of that. Oh, and the Michael Jackson's Thriller video, I remember giving me some nightmares too. This is an often rotating list, but these will be my top 5 in this moment right now. So number 1 would be Hellraiser 1 and 2. I am going to take some liberties and combine them into one film. I love how they flow into each other. It's a great continuation of the first one into the second one that gets even crazier. But I am a huge horror fantasy and Clive Barker fan. And just the amount of imagination just put into this story in these films is just fantastic. It's cool seeing Clive Barker behind the camera too. He's also a visual artist, so he definitely has an eye for film. And as you can see with Nightbreed as well too, I think he just nailed all 3 of those films. But I could watch Hellraiser 1 and 2 on repeat over and over again. The actors are great. Julia is one of the best villains in horror history, and she never gets enough credit. But that'd be my number 1. My second choice would be Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. I love everything about this film, right down to the ad campaigns for it. The trailer stated that it was based on a true story, and as we know, it's loosely based on the Ed Gein murders. But back then, it caused a lot of hysteria and it filled theater seats, so it ended up being a successful idea. They had a very small budget, and what they were able to stretch out of that budget was very impressive. The film itself is just looks and feels disgusting. It's sweaty, it's stinky, it just smells like you think roadkill would smell like, and got some great performances out of there, some great characters, and I cannot recommend this film enough. My third pick would be the absolutely fucking bonkers film Demons by Lamberto Bava. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It is the perfect drinking with your friends drive-in movie. It is an 80s time capsule. It has a little bit of everything from helicopters to your 80s punks to demons and hookers and movie theater madness. Thrash metal on the soundtrack is just so much fun and so wild. I could watch that one on repeat too. Really fun practical effects. Really just, I don't know. If you're in a bad mood, Demons will pick you up. My fourth choice is the classic John Carpenter's The Thing. I think this is probably in a lot of people's top 10, top 5 lists, and there's a reason for that. It is just a horror fantasy, sci-fi, whodunit, alien mystery, gore fest with some of the best practical effects that come out of the 80s. It is such a fun watch, and I think John Carpenter really just is prolific and just put out some really incredible films. The Fog is another one that I really love too, but this one just a tad better for me in my book. But yeah, really well done. If you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor and check it out. And I hope they don't remake it or fuck with it anymore. My fifth choice would be Michael Suave's The Church. It came out in 1989. It is an Italian horror film. And as I mentioned multiple times, I love horror fantasy. I'm also a fan of folk horror and religious horror, and this film kind of combines all of my favorite worlds into one. It's just as tongue-in-cheek as a lot of Italian horror can be, with the overdramatic acting, but there's a lot of wonderful visuals here, and the story is really cool too, and the soundtrack is great. It has all the things you love about Italian horror wrapped into one, but with the fantasy elements attached to it, and just the beautiful practical effects. I think this is kind of an underrated classic. I have a lot of runners-up for other favorite films that sometimes kind of weave in and out of this list. Obviously, Alien and Aliens are both just killer. I love Curtains. I love Misery. I love the director's cut of My Bloody Valentine. I love Possessor, Pyewacket, The Gates of Hell, The Beyond, Deep Red. I could go on forever. All right, it's quite a large list, so I'll do my best to condense it. Alice Meo McKay, hope I'm saying this correctly, is a young trans woman from Australia who already has 4 full-length films under her belt, and I'm pretty sure she has a couple more coming out very, very shortly. It's really cool to see someone so young have so many movies out, and all of them are pretty poignant. They'll deal with modern queer issues. T-Blockers happens to be my favorite one, so if you are looking to explore her catalog, I would start there. Dutch Merrick, he's another queer filmmaker. He's doing the Horror in the High Desert trilogy, which is fantastic. I'm also a fan of found footage horror. And the first Horror in the High Desert is kind of an unsolved mystery style mockumentary thing with an extremely terrifying ending. The Addams Family, so Zelda, Toby, and John are just killing it right now. They keep just putting out really just imaginative and gorgeous horror. The Deeper You Dig, Hellbender, Where the Devil Roams. Their new one is called Hellhole. It's a monster film, which I'm excited about. But the films are just really just well shot. They're gorgeous. They're stunning. They're terrifying. If you haven't seen Hellbender, it's one of my favorite films about witchcraft, so I would definitely recommend it. Robbie Banfitch is another one that I just love his kind of just middle fingers up approach to filmmaking. I love his internet presence, and I think he's making some really cool stuff right now. So he did The Outwaters, and he has a new one called Tinsman Road on the way, so keep an eye out for him. Troy Escamilla, another indie filmmaker who also runs the Houston Horror Festival, is just constantly working and making cool stuff too. He did Teacher Shortage and Mrs. Claus, and currently working on a film called Hollow Lake that I will be in. So it's a queer slasher. Keep an eye out for that one, but he's a great guy, and I just love what he's doing right now. Roger Connors, who's also kind of a part of this family as well. He is currently working on a film called Meet the Movie, which I think is done. Roger is just super motivated, always putting cool stuff out, always supporting other filmmakers. Josh Pangborn and Nokia at Sidekick Productions are another one's just never stop. They have a YouTube series called Demon Doctor, and a few other ones are all horror based. Some of it is comedy horror. They just released or just finished A Taste of Youth. I'm not sure when it's going to be released. They have another one called The Brooklyn Butcher coming out, and I know Josh is already planning on doing another full length in the future, but I just admire their dedication, and just their films are fun too. They're really well done. Local filmmaker Brian Pollan is another one of my current favorites. He's one of the most prolific filmmakers I've ever met. He just eats, breathes, and lives this stuff. Every waking hour outside of his full-time job, he's making movies. He does it all in his garage, does everything right down to the scoring, the filming, the audio. His specialty, the over-the-top and super gruesome special effects work he does. He's like the MacGyver of splatterpunk. Fetus, Septic, Cryptic Plasm, Bone Sickness are some of the films he's done, and I highly recommend watching them. I'm just really inspired by the guy, and yeah, we're helping him right now in a film called Abysmal Purgatory, which is just gonna be epic as fuck. There's so many demons and monsters and weird shit in it, and I cannot wait. It's gonna be one of the best horror movies coming out in the next few years, so keep an eye out for that one. Chris LaMartina and Melissa LaMartina, I'm also looking forward to the films they're working on. Chris is the director of the WNUF Halloween Special, President's Day, What Happens Next Will Scare You. Melissa is also known as the beautiful Aurora Borealis, are also working on a secret project right now too that should be coming out this year. But they're also two amazing people, and I'm looking forward to see what the future holds for them as well. It's kind of a weird one for me, because I think like I'm more inspired by the actual films themselves more so than directors. I don't think there's a director out there that has like a flawless catalog, but there's certain elements that they do bring to their films that I appreciate. I think in regards to like my current inspirations, I think Brian Pollan again, just how prolific he is and just how much he gives himself to his art is really inspiring too. And just the imagination, the creativity, he just works with so little and just makes it look bigger than it is. And that to me is a huge inspiration to what we do. A lot of the monster makeup stuff is very micro budget, pirate punk filmmaking, and anyone that has the patience to do it, you have to love it to want to do this shit, because it's rewarding sometimes, but it's a lot of fucking work for very little payoff. Another director that I've always been inspired by is Takashi Miike. I think he's another one that just doesn't stop. I mean, he puts out like 800 movies a year, and the majority of them are really good. And I love his attention to detail. Each frame in his film, you can pause any of his movies at any point, and it looks like a painting. My favorite of his is probably Imprint. Is one of the masters of horror films, but it's just a kaleidoscopic nightmare, and every frame is just gorgeous. And I just love his really surrealist, bizarre, almost dream logic-y approach to a lot of the films he makes, and he's unapologetic and does what the fuck he wants, and I do love that as well. I find that a lot of my inspiration comes more from when I was a kid and reading a lot of folklore and mythology and cryptozoology and studying unsolved mysteries, that I try to incorporate as much of that into my storytelling as possible. I think these stories are just a lot of really interesting, well-crafted fables and myths that are just loaded with all kinds of cool creatures and monsters and life lessons, and I think there's a lot of gold in there, so I do try to incorporate that into a lot of stuff that I do. So there is a lot going on. It's all good stuff. So first and foremost, we're trying to get St. Drogo onto Blu-ray, which we're hoping to have out by the end of July, and then streaming hopefully August, September. It's a long, crazy process, but we're trying to move it along as fast as we can. Our next film, Queen of the Rats, we are currently in pre-production for that. We are doing some set building right now. Our monster is about 80% done. It's looking really cool. It's gigantic, so that's why it's taking some time. We're also trying to get our Indiegogo together so we can start doing some crowdsourcing. And if we can nail our budget, we'll be bringing Joe Castro back on board to do the special effects. This is probably going to be our our grossest one yet. So with our monster makeup guarantee, there'll be plenty of gore, and in this one, plenty of other miscellaneous fluids. It's about a noise rock band, the mafia, and a giant cosmic horror, all kind of converging in the early thousands here in Providence. And let's see, so for myself, I just released my first novella back in April called The White Bishop. Aaron Beauregard helped me convert the screenplay version, which I'd written, into a novel format, and he kind of trained me on self-publishing and just formatting a novel, and it's been awesome. So if you haven't read anything by Aaron Beauregard, he is kind of right now the king of splatterpunk, and he's been putting out some crazy shit, so check it out. So then, since then, I had a second screenplay that I've adapted to a novel format myself. It is called Recessive Nature. That should be hopefully coming out by the end of July as well. It is a dark horror fantasy. It takes place in the 80s and loaded with all kinds of fun cryptids. So if you are a fan of cryptozoology and gore, this will be for you. And I'm also about 3/4 of the way done the first draft of my third novel called To Break a Pale Yoke. It is a religious horror that takes place in the early 90s, and it's my interpretation of human vessels in Calvinism, and kind of, I guess, is some more adjacent to Hellraiser or Carrie, kind of, not really. It's probably the closest reference points I can give you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Working on helping Troy Escamilla next week in Cleveland for the Hollow Lake filming. I'll be playing the role of Alex in that. We're going to be helping Brian Poland with Abysmal Purgatory. Ryan and I have been helping out with some behind-the-scenes stuff, and I'm also acting in it as well. So yeah, that one's going to be pretty epic. I'm really looking forward to both of these films. But thank you for having me. I'm really honored you all asked me to do this, and keep supporting indie, micro-budget queer horror, and hope you all have a good day.